Good morning and welcome to the Saturday morning lecture series. I'm so glad you're here today as we uh, continue our foray into our Science of Mind textbooks as we do every year to really give us a weekly approach, a weekly template to understand who we are, where we are, and why we are as we continue to expand and grow within all of life. And so today we begin the second part, if you will, of the first part, really, because the first few sections were on what God is, the way it works. And now we're looking at the nature of being, which is an easy thing to say, but not so much to understand. And so today we are hoping to delve into this idea of in the beginning. In the beginning. So we begin to understand the nature of this place that we live in, the nature of ourselves, the nature of what it means to be an emanation of the Most High God. And so I trust everyone has had a great week and that we're ready to sit back and be involved, ask questions, get engaged, because we're now in a time where we have to be engaged. We have to be involved. We have to really, really begin to exercise the power and presence of the divine that is within each and every one of us. And so as we begin today to look at this idea of in the beginning, And so, first and foremost, in the beginning, there was a self-contained supreme intelligence with agency that spoke the world into existence, saying be, and it was. Saying be, and it was. And so we see here that in the beginning, and this is a story that's from the monotheistic system of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but similar stories are throughout the religious and spiritual world that speaks to this power, this presence, this intelligence that is always present, that is always there for us to tap into and utilize its agency. And you may ask, why is that? Because everything that is made was made from this power, this intelligence, this spirit. Therefore, that essence is in all things. And all things mean all things, not just humans, but plants and minerals. Anything in the cosmos and everything in the cosmos is made up of this intelligence. And so in the beginning, there is this statement that says, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? You see, the Word is the mold which acts through law to produce forms. It's a creative process that is supported by the entire universe. By the entire universe. Now, the question that a lot may be asking, well, what is the word? What is the word? Well, we know that at its essence, words are sounds, and sounds are broken down into frequencies or vibrations. Frequencies and vibrations, which ultimately translate into light or energy. Now we're getting a little scientific here, but to really understand the beginning, and what I think our founder Ernest Holmes was trying to articulate, is this idea of what is the substance of the universe? What is the substance of us? What is the substance of the power to create and to put it into process so that it continues to create? Right? They estimate that the universe is like 13.8 billion years, 14 billion years old. Now, personally, I can't even in my consciousness, my waking consciousness, I can't even conceive of 14 billion years. And then we get down to the idea of 3.8 billion years ago, what we know as the known universe, as the known cosmos as we see it happen, 3.84 billion years ago. So what was going on that 10 billion years before? What power, what presence that created us from this gassy form, from this light energy that is now synonymous with the creative power itself? Within every tradition, the idea of light being a representation of the God power or the life principle is paramount. So we have to begin to understand that from that point, this power of the word, this sound, this energy, this light, because that is what creates. If you think about anything in your environment right now, whether it's a chair or a car or anything you can, or feeling, it was generated from this idea of the word. From this idea of the word. Now, when we think about it, the word of God means the power of spirit to declare itself into manifestation or into form. So when we say word, we really are talking about more than just the spoken word, because the word also is synonymous with the concept or ideas or images through faith and evidence of what's possible. That's what we're looking at when we talk about the word. It's not just the sound. It is the concepts in our mind that gets translated into the word. And so as we begin to understand that, we begin to think about what it is that we do each day. Because when we look at from the biblical story or from the monotheistic story, that word came forth, and then we saw what? We saw processes taking place. When we look at the whole creation, when we look at the beginning, the story says there was a process. On one day, this was created. The second day, this created. And then after that process was complete and manifest, it says that the divine rest. It looked at the universe and marveled at its creation. Well, when we think about how we create a thing and what we do after we have success in a process or an endeavor, that's exactly what we do. That's exactly what we do. We begin to put in motion an idea, an intelligent concept, that begins to be supported by everything around us. Now, I look back now to my childhood when my friends and I we would go in this little wood section, and we would build tree houses and clubhouses, and we had the idea of what we wanted, but we didn't have all the wood and all the nails. We would go find old pieces of wood and take the nails out and straighten them. And when I look back at that, I realized that the universe provided exactly what we needed once we were clear about what it is that we wanted. Once we articulated that word, that concept, that idea, that took on form, i.e., it took on a word, a actual verbal speaking, and then it had a mind of its own. It had agency of its own. And so Dr. Holmes tells us that we have to be careful with our word, because in the beginning, that word sets forth the process. It sets forth the attraction of what's in our environment to create. And so when we look at what we have now, the creation that has gone forth from that initial idea from spirit, we have gone from living in caves to living in space. From living in caves to living in space in a very short period of time relative to the length of this universe. And so, what is it about the beginning, about God, about the supreme intelligence that we need to tap into to be successful? That we need to observe and study to recognize it. Now, to gain this knowledge, how do we gain access and knowledge of this intelligence? Through science, religion, and philosophy, the tools to explore, experience, and express divine intelligence. This is the model. This is what we have to begin to look into these ways of knowing, these systems of knowledge, and observe the universe, observe ourselves, observe others, and begin to express and experience the power, the presence, the intelligence that is God. There's that song that we sang, it's in every one of us, and we can tap into it without ever knowing how, once we align ourselves with the supreme knowledge, with the supreme understanding. So I would like to just ask the question. When you think about the beginning of something, what comes to mind? Whether it's from a religious standpoint, a philosophical standpoint, any reference point you want to use so you can articulate your idea of the beginning, what would that be? If you feel so inclined to put that out there. Put that out there, because I'm going to drop in the chat right now a link to a vision. Shay says vision. I love that. And I just dropped into the chat. Oh, and I hope it put the link in there. Let me grab the link, because I don't think it actually put the link in. See, can I copy this link? Copy link. Let me drop that back in there, because it doesn't look like, there we go. This is a story that I came across the other day where, as that first one said, it's the scientists have now put together what they says represents a CT scan of the universe. A CT scan of the universe, where it has been able to look at light and energy and frequency as far back as the Big Bang, as we sometimes call it from a scientific perspective, and they're able to put together a section, a cross section of the creation of the universe. And now they're beginning to explore and ask the questions and look at this map about at what point did certain things begin to happen in the universe? When did this energy begin to slow down and become things? That thought, that energy, that frequency, that vibration, that light, at what point did it come down and create matter? Now, some people may say, well, who cares? Well, everyone should care if they want to understand the creative process, which is seated in our teachings. This creative process is the ability to change your thinking and change your life. That's what we're talking about in the beginning. We want to look to change our lives if they're not expressing the supreme intelligence of the universe that we contain. Not that any situation is better than any other situations, but we know if we have access to a universal powers that is always present, the question is, we want to understand that. We want to utilize that, because that's what our founder, Ernest Holmes, was hinting at, was looking at, was providing us from a cross section of cultures, philosophies, and religion. That is what we begin to look at and look for and look with when we step into this teaching. So, I look back at that question. Shay said vision. And then she came back and said direct information from the divine mind. That is a direct frequency, a direct insight. And I love what Wayne says, Jedi Knight. Basically, that story from Star Wars gives a good indication of who and what we are in relationship to the beginning and tapping into that force, that power in the beginning. Now, unfortunately, I would say that that story put these the spectrum of light into opposition against each other, light and dark, as if they're fighting, but they're not. It is what that represents is this idea of how do you balance energy, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. How do you balance it to create life? Not that it's fighting against each other. It's always there. It's two ends of a stick, if you will. But how do we become conscious of this and not put it in a punitive way, not put it in some divisive way or some idea of separation? That whole idea is what has created some of the conflict that we're currently facing, whether it's weather-wise or climate-wise or societal-wise. It is this idea of taking one thing and pitting it against each other. That's why when we look at the creation story, after all that light and word and creative process, God looked at it and said, it was good. He didn't say it was sometime good, or it was good only when you did it this way, that it was all good. Now, sometimes people use that as a cop-out not to do the work, or not to do this thing where we have to go and experience and understand and begin to know what it is. Look at these concepts and then begin to look at how do we take and access this knowledge. Well, that's how we do it. We begin to ask the questions. We begin to look at things not as they are, but as we imagine they could be, because then they begin to transform. That's what happened in the beginning. God looked at everything around him or her, because there's no gender in a divine idea. There is gender principles of give and take, but in the personification, There is no such thing. So we have to begin to tap into this intelligence where we are. And where and the results of that shows how our thinking of a situation is, of a thing is. So what is it, as Roy says, you're becoming conscious of something? What does that mean in terms of the beginning? What does it mean to be conscious? Anybody put an answer in there. I'm curious as to, we talk about consciousness in this teaching, and we're looking here at the beginning, and we're saying supreme consciousness, intelligence is the impetus, or the thing that puts life into motion. What do you think that is? How would you describe consciousness? What does that look like? What does that act like? What does it feel like to be conscious? I'm curious, because that sets things into motion. You know the old adage that if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail because you're trying to force it in there. But if I'm conscious that there are other things available than a hammer, like a screwdriver, okay, now I get different results. Now I get different vantage points of this thing called life. So Shay says, I don't think we get to know exactly what consciousness is. I would submit this idea. Consciousness is a full presence awareness. We are conscious that we are in this presentation having dialogue. We are conscious of the temperature around us. We are conscious of whether our hands are cold or warm, or all these tangible kinds of things, part of consciousness. But at the very same time, there are other things going on in our environment that our senses, or our conscious senses, may not pick up. There's a vibration in the room that's generating either heat or cold, unseen. There's air in our environment, unseen, but it has an effect. So the idea of being conscious is about the not the understanding, because we may not understand it. It is about being aware of the total presence that's going on around us, even if we can't articulate it or express it. And that's what Ernest Holmes talks about when he talks about law and consciousness and the word. He says the word is a law unto itself. In the beginning, they spoke the word, and it became a law unto itself, meaning it had within it, seen and unseen, all the pieces to manifest itself, as we said earlier, to take that mold and create a thing. So when we begin to look at consciousness, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at things seen and unseen that fit together like a puzzle, if you will, when we activate it. When we activate it, it's like the light switch. The electricity is always running, but it's only when you hit the switch that the light comes on. Are we hitting the switch to begin the creation of our lives, or the recreation of our lives? Because all the stories that we see, all the teachings that we have, we should be able to see ourselves in those stories to generate motive, to generate intelligence, knowledge, experience, to create a better me, a better you, a better society. Because that is what we need now more than ever. More than ever. Because, we talk about first cause, right? The first cause is to have an idea of connectedness. That's what happened. It says There was this one thing in the universe in the beginning, and then that thing, power, presence, intelligence, energy, light, goes by many names, expressed itself into the varied different images that we see, ideas that we see. And if we get them out of context, not understanding the oneness of it all, and that the expression of that oneness can take many forms, then we may begin to look at things a little askew. Because if you take yourself right now, you are more than just a person or a mother or a father or a sister or an accountant or a banker. Whatever it is, you are more than that. And in fact, you may be all of those things at the exact same time. So what is the real you? Is it the banker? Is it the mother? Is it the father? Is it the athlete? Or is there something greater, some bigger container of who and what you are that happened in the beginning? In the beginning. Think about your birth for a moment. In the beginning. Each one of us, when we were born, was a thought or a feeling or connection between our mother and father, however it displayed itself. That thought, that idea, that feeling took form in the form of you. Now, whether they had the conscious idea of let's make Johnny or Sally, or whether it was unconscious at a vibrational physical level, it took shape, it took form, and it created each and every one of us. In that same idea, in that same way, this universe was created by the divine intelligence, by the omnipresent, omnipotent energy that is still present in each and every one of us. And so as we continue to really engage this idea, see, this is a really intricate idea that we have, and we have to engage it. We have to engage it. And so when we begin to do that and use these tools to gain access to this knowledge, we move into this place of we have to have faith in it. Ernest Holmes says, I live in the faith that there is a presence and a power greater than I am that nurtures and supports me in ways I could never imagine. Goes on to say, to activate your faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. To keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thought which weakens our conviction. Our mind must be steady. Our minds must be steady. So this is what we're dealing with. These are principles and laws that are universal and eternal. You just take this idea about something that you have poured into and think about how it's happened. You wanted to learn to play the piano, or you wanted to take a martial arts, or you wanted to find the right job or the right mate. There was an idea, the beginning of that, and then it took on a life of its own, if you will. You created a life that went forth and took the lessons and thought about the music in your mind, or practiced the athletic endeavor, or had some idea of what this partner you were looking for would be. And the creative process begun. And in this same manner, using that same metaphor, this is what happened in the creation of this universe. Because we know intelligence exists, right? Because we have intelligence, each and every one of us, at various levels. Some higher than others. but none of them are not needed. Each one has a place in that puzzle, as we talked about, that creates this grand tapestry called life. This grand tapestry called life. And so the question becomes, as we begin this year to really activate and engage these teachings, because you know it's one thing to know the word, but it's another thing entirely to allow that word to act in your life, or you to be engaging with that word. Because we know every thought you think does not come to fruition. Every thought you think may not even be in line with who you are. So there is a belief, faith, if you will. There is a practice, an interaction, if you will, with this word, with this understanding, if we are going to begin to create a life, a world that works for all. Because it is all. Think about this. Think about this. How many of you take vitamins of any kind? And you don't have to say yes or no, because most of us take some kind of vitamin, at least one multivitamin or some calcium or something. But when we think about a multivitamin, next time you go take your multivitamin, look at the package and look at what you're taking. Copper, magnesium, iron, all these different minerals that we say, or some people say, are just rocks. But then why are you taking them rocks every day? And even if you don't take the vitamins, if you take spinach or milk or eggs or these different foods that we need to nourish and create ourselves, they contain those things that we so call unintelligent rocks that have no life. Well, if they had no life, why would we be taking that in? Why would we get sick if we had an iron deficiency? Because we live in a world that is one, created to be an example, an expression of the divine intelligence of the universe. We have to stop and look at what we're doing. We have to stop and understand these principles so that once we can begin to explore and experience and express, as we said earlier, this teaching, this knowledge, then we can be about the business of being children, and we already are children in that metaphor, children of the Most High God, and we can begin to be our brothers and sisters keepers because we know we're all connected. We know there's nothing idle in the universe, even though it may look that way. That's what the creative process is about. That's what in the beginning is about. It's understanding the process of life. This thing called the life principle. Because we know there are many different forms. Like take the form of radio. There are many different types of radios. There's the word, the form, i.e., of radio, which means a device for communication, right? There's some radios we can only listen from. We can listen to our music. We can listen to a talk show. We can only listen. It's a one-way communication. But then there's a walkie-talkie radio or a CB radio. Same principle, same thing taking place there. But now we can have two-way conversation. I can talk to you and you can talk to me. So what are we talking about here? Think about it. Think about this in the beginning and how we have arbitrarily divided things up to create what appears to be separation and contention and competition. But when we sit back and look at how the word takes on different forms, that mold can be used for different things, then we begin to see the connectedness of it all. And then the next thing is, what is the process What is this beginning process, this evolutionary understanding of who and what we are and the power that has created? How does it work together? How do we use it for good? For good. Not to say that bad exists, if you will, but it exists in the concept or the idea that we're not using a thing for what it's created for. If I try to eat soup with a fork created for something totally, I'm that's going to create a challenge. You might not get much soup if you're trying to eat it with a fork. So you go get the spoon. So we have to experiment. we have to engage this thing called life. And so I hope that as we look at this beginning, as we look at this chapter or section of the book, the nature of being, the nature of who we are, this is where we begin. This is where we start. And so, as we close out, I think this is a great thing to remember and work with. In the beginning, you set your intentions, envision your dreams, and take the first step. Every great journey starts with the courage to begin. With the courage to begin. We have to begin to engage this thing called life. We have to begin to engage these teachings and principles of the science of mind, religious science. You'll always see me bringing forth science because Dr. Holmes understood that science is one of the tools to get into the unseen, to those things that affect us that we don't even know they exist sometimes. But as we delve into religion and science and philosophy, we begin to see how they are one and the same, just looking at something from a different vantage point. It is paramount. I would suggest it's paramount right now that we begin to become students of this teaching, to become students of life, and not allow someone to just tell us. We have to experience. I could sit here all day and explain to you, or try to explain to you, what a mango tastes like. I can use great colors and colorful words and facial expression. I could do my darndest to explain to you what a mango tastes like. But until you taste the mango, you have no idea of what I'm talking about. And then, because there are different types of mango, some are sweet, some are bitter, some are tangy, some are juicier than others. You have to engage mango, if you will, to get this, to understand mango. Same thing with citrus. I mean, you have the family of citrus fruits rather, that range from the kumquat to the grapefruit. All in the same family, different appearances, different tastes, different textures in some of them. Think about that from the beginning, where this one word, citrus, took on many manifestations of that one idea. That's your life. That's this universe. That's our community. And the more we begin to own into that, to lean into that, and understand that in the beginning, you set your intentions, envision your dreams, and take the first step, because every great journey starts with the courage to begin. So I hope I've shared some ideas here, some impetus for you to really begin to say, how do I begin to change my life? How do I begin to change the world? How do I begin to be a creative force in the universe that represents the power, the presence of the divine that is within us all. And so if there are no questions, I want to thank you for joining us today. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time for the SOM lectures, where we begin to go deep into our teachings, into our textbook, and dissect it and make these parallels to life, so that we can activate this teaching in everything that we do. Because we are, quite frankly, the ones that we've been waiting for. And once we wake up to that, we will see a brand new day. And so I want to wish you a happy day. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. It's Super Bowl weekend, so enjoy it if that's part of your world. And I want to share a couple of promotionals for the station. Please join us. Please tell friends to come and join us. Direct them to the play afterwards on the YouTube channel. But this information is pertinent for us to begin to live a fulfilling life of love, light, and insight. And so it is. Amen.
Join our celebration of Black History Month. Only on New Thought Media Network. New videos every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. 28 unique Black History moments. Every day in February. Only on New Thought Media Network.